Hello and welcome to the session. Now let's start with an interesting topic called as fixtures, and let us see some theoretical concept of fixtures and how it is going to help us in terms of writing the automation framework in a easy manner. So let's get started. So what is fixture? JUnit fixtures. So fixtures are simply a piece of code to be technically perfect, but then there is some theory behind it. So let us see that. Now, first let us understand these test cases. So let's consider an e-commerce scenario where you have some, login search, checkout, login search, checkout, payment, and logout. So if you see in this couple of scenarios, there are some steps which are common always. For example, login and logout. So will it be possible to have this piece of code separately designed and it will be called as and when it is required? So that is basically similar needs of multiple test cases can be grouped as a fixture. So fixture in the sense that fixture will have this implementation separately done, and then we can reuse that in our automation code as and when we want. So a test fixture is a fixed set of objects used as a baseline for running the test. So very similar. So we want that for every actual test case, every similar needs of every test case, we want that some login functionality should be implemented and it can be reused just for our requirement. The fixtures make things little easy and allow to focus on developing the core needs. Very sensible point here. Why? Because if you see, login and logout are the basic parts of automation framework. Now we don't want to implement login and logout or a functionality which is repeatable all the time. We want that to be available separately, and we will focus on only the core part of the automation. So that is how is a fixture. Now let us see with an example how it can be done using actual programming. So in JUnit, we write individual test methods with this test annotation. And then as we discussed, so login and logout, that can be considered as a fixture with the annotation called as at the rate before or at the rate after. Now these are the annotations just like other annotation, but then we will see how is the flow of execution when we execute, when we use these annotations. So let us start with an example. So I have this sample project and this is the first one. Now let us see what is the thing. So we have this class demo 401 fixture. So there are some global variables here. And now you see my original test case is one test case or one test method, wherein I want to actually go to a website and maybe click on some button or interact with some web element. Now to do that, first what I would need is I want to set up a Chrome browser instance. And once I'm done, I want to close the browser instance. So that can be kept under this fixtures called as before after. Now before after are part of this JUnit package. They are coming from this JUnit package, same place from where this test annotation has inherited. Now let us see what is there in before. So in the before part, simply we are invoking a browser instance, as simple as that. Okay, in this example, there's no login case, but in this example, what I'm doing is I'm basically launching a browser instance. So what I'm doing is launch a browser instance, do some operation. So go to some URL and do some operation. Let's say click on something. Once I'm done, this is the core part. Then I will actually go to after annotation and I will quit the browser. As simple as that. Let us run it and see what happens. Right, so Chrome browser has started. It will go to a particular web page. It will click on some button and it will quit the browser, as simple as that. But now you see we have this functionality called as uh, uh, fixtures, which will set up a browser and it will tear down the browser. You can take any name of this method you want. So the point here is, now if I write another test method here, let's say web scenario tester 2, tester 3, tester 4, then for every scenario I need not to repeat this. Why? Because this will be automatically taken care by your JUnit framework. Whenever you declare before and after, that will be called before every test method and after every test method, right? So same thing here. So before every test method, this will be called, then the steps of the test will be executed, and the after annotation will be called, and whatever is there inside annotation, that will be invoked. So that's how it is. So that is simple example of fixtures. Now let us see other example. Right, so this is before class and after class. Now remember, we have this class, whatever class name what you want. So let us see this example. Now in the next example, so consider that now this part is clear, like before and after part, before and after. But now consider that you want to run a specific test before running everything, before running the very first test case, and you want to run something after running the last test case. Remember, before running all the test cases, after running all the test cases. Very simple example is you want to spin up an environment, let's say SIT or any other environment. You want to do some DB connection, and maybe you want to read some configuration files, one time activity. Then you do your individual test, and after you finish everything, then you want to execute, like you want to spin down the environment, and you want to disconnect the database, and you want to close the file connection and whatever. So that these comes under the before class and after class. So this annotation or JUnit fixture before class and after class, they will be called before the entire class. So if you see here this before class example, this will be called before executing any of the test case here, and after class will be called after executing all the test cases in this current class, right? So there is a difference here, before class and before, after class and after. So before class will be called only once, it will be called only once before running any of the test case. After class will be called only once after running all the test cases. But if you see this before and after, this will be called before every method, right? So before this method, before will be called, after this method, after will be called. So how is the sequence? The sequence is before class, before, then web scenario tester 1, then after, then again before, then web scenario tester 2, then after, and then after class. So that's how it is as it is showing here. So before class once, then before test after, before test after, before test after, and after class. So that is how is the sequence. So let us see this with an example. Right, so before class, so what I'm doing here, I want to spin up some environment and those kind of settings. So for now, in this example, I'm just putting some println statements like reading the data, making the requirement database connection, making the website up and running. And in the after class, what I'm doing, just opposite of that. So what I'm doing, I'm closing the file, closing properties Excel CSV file. I am disconnecting the database, and I am shutting down the environment. I am making the environment as down. Now this is the before class, after class, and then before after is same. So before I'm launching a Chrome, and in after I am quitting the Chrome. Now, so now you see, now that we have these fixtures available all the way from here to here. Now if any new test case has to be designed, or any test case has to be deleted, or updated or whatever, so we need not to focus on this part. We will just have to focus on the actual or the core logic. That is the advantage of fixtures, right? So let us run this once. Now one point to note here is, so notice that the method associated with this must be static. This is by the design from JUnit. So if you see this before method, there is no static here. So public void and whatever method name, but in before class, this has to be static. And in after class, it also has to be static. This is by design from JUnit itself, that the method has to be static. You can give any method name here, doesn't matter, but it should be static for before class and after class. Okay, so now let us run this. In this case, what will happen? It will run these two test cases. It will basically launch the browser twice and close it twice. And we will see this print statements from before class and after class. Let us run it. So first test case is being executed, and now second started, and second is closed. right? So second has failed for some reason, which is good. Now we will be able to see failed test case result also. So now if you see this before class, so here I'm printing reading input data and environment database. So if same thing here. So reading input data, making database connection and making the environment up and running. So before class, then before actual step after, and then again before, yeah, uh, before individual step after, and then everything after class. So closing the database and making the website down. So if you see individual results, it will be shown here, and the overall test results will be shown here entirely. So that is the use of fixtures and the advantage of using fixtures. Now, this might be a possible question. Like now we have a mechanism. We have before, we have after, we have before class, after class. So typically, what should what activity should be in before and after? So, for example, navigating to home page and clearing browser cookies. So this may go as a before, because for every test case, before every test case, you would want to go to this home page. You want to log in, log out. So again, before and after, you want to read some specific data for that particular test case or test scenario. You want to launch and close a Chrome instance or any browser instance. You want to log some individual test scenario reports, and probably if you want to take screenshot of the failed test cases, that will go in the after part. Now similarly, before class and after class. Now in the before class, uh, typically we would go for mostly one-time setup activities. So if you want to read some config file, probably just before execution of all the test cases, you want to read a config file. You want to read some website properties or a common username or common credentials for website login and all. Again, if you want to have, this is also possible, you want to launch Chrome instance. This is entirely up to you if you want to choose it or not. And prepare and publish the final test report. So after running all the test cases from a particular class, you would want to prepare test report for all the test cases, and you want to email it. So this is a typical list of activity, what should go where. But again, it depends on your business problem, right? So now let us see the next one. Now let us see. So we have an annotation called as fixed method order, and we have method sorters like name ascending, and we have descending also, ascending and descending. So now this is about all about the sequencing. Like we have multiple test cases here. Now in what order this has to be executed? So when I use this fixed method order annotation, and when I pass this parameter ascending, that means by default the method execution will be in ascending order. So now if you see, this is test 2 update, this is test 1 update. Now when I say ascending, that means this will be executed first and this will be executed second. Okay, so in the ascending order. Okay, so test 1 and test 2, first and second. All right, so this is again a feature. Sometimes we want to execute some scenarios or some steps in a sequence, so this will be helpful. But of course, this is not 100% fit. We will see this in the observation part. Now this another annotation called as ignore. So ignore, as the name suggests, if you want to ignore a particular test case, so you may want to delete it, or simply if you don't want to delete it, you just put it as ignore. So that test case will not be executed. So let us see. Now in this case, only second test case will execute. Okay, test ignored. So test 1 ignored, test 2 is run. Right, so now let us see some of the observation here. So let us see some of the observation. Now overall JUnit framework, there are many other things, but then some of the observation is there is no mechanism to set the test priority. Now sometimes we would want that there are hundreds of test cases, so we would want, let's say, want to execute only high priority test cases because of some business requirement. So we don't have as such any direct feature in JUnit. Test method execution sequence is in alphabetical order, ascending or descending only, but that is fixed. So either alphabetically and ascending or descending. There's no other mechanism available. This this I see is not that much flexibility. Can't set the test method dependency. Now, let's say we are writing some test cases, and for that test cases, we would want that earlier some XYZ test case would be executed. Now, for example, if you are doing login, search, checkout, and payment. Now, for checkout and payment, typically on an e-commerce website, you would want that user should be logged in. Now, if the user is not logged in, then there is no point in running the checkout and payment test cases. Now, so for the checkout and payment test cases, there's a dependency that login test case should pass. User should be logged in. Now, there is that is the reason here. So we cannot have any dependency mechanism with which we can set, you know, some particular test method should be executed only if the other test case is executed and maybe passed or failed. Now there is no explicit mechanism to group test methods or group test cases. Now this is again an issue that there's no proper grouping we can do in JUnit framework, JUnit test framework. Now this is all about the JUnit part, the basic hands-on and basic examples as mentioned here. So for the next part we will see in the subsequent session. Thank you.